Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the fourth book of the new prophecy, Starlight. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So first off, not talking about the book specifically, like the actual written part of it, but we have a new map. Yay! The Lake Territories. We're finally here, in all of its glory. Supposedly. But anyway, the prologue. So StarClan has had their own journey. Makes sense. They're moving from the original StarClan to the Lake Territory StarClan. We don't really get a lot of details of this journey. They reference it a couple times, but we never see it or really understand how it happened. But I guess it isn't terribly important. It's just kind of like a footnote, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Midnight is here for reasons. Foreshadowing? Questioning mark? Apparently, even though the clans made a very perilous journey and they're very hopeful that this will bring in new beginnings and new hope, there are new prophecies. Before there is blood, before there is peace, blood will spill blood, and the lake will run red. There's a fascinating start. It keeps the intrigue going regarding the series, because even though we've just had this very big and bombastic prophecy and journey and stuff, we're not out of the woods yet. In fact, it's only just beginning. But let's get into the main book. So, first off, Brambleclaw is our POV again, for reasons. We'll get into that later. So, we pick off right where Dawn left us off. The cats have made this journey, they're tired, they're exhausted, but they're hopeful that, this lake will, and this new territory will be their new home. But, they're still a little skeptical, which is fair. I mean, who wouldn't be? It's also known that Tallstar is very weak. He's exhausted from this journey, as is every cat, but he seems to have taken to it harder than others. They make their way down to the lakeshore and they sleep for the night, and when they wake up, they try to figure out what's next. Like, are they going to just divide the territories right off the bat? But Mudclaw, who is the WindClan deputy, he's very forward. He wants to just, establish things right off the bat. The other leaders, particularly Firestar, are a little more skeptical of this. They want to, figure things out first. But to, calm things down, Squirrel Paw is made a warrior. Squirrel Flight, a.k.a. Squilf. That's pretty cool. I mean, it makes sense that she's made a warrior. She went on this great journey. She's been through incomprehensible perils that few cats would even be able to understand. So it makes sense that she becomes a warrior. And her name's pretty cool too. So the leaders then all kind of congregate to kind of decide that they're going to send the journey cats, plus Mistyfoot, since there's no RiverClan representative, to scout out the lake territory. They're used to making journeys into unknown places. They're probably the most qualified. And so they set off. Leafpaw is a little concerned for her sister, which who wouldn't be, considering all the stuff that's happened. But the cats then set off to journey around the lake. Meanwhile, Leafpaw thinks Crowfeather is hot. There's not really a better way to say that. That's just kind of what happens. So the Meds kind of have a little conversation to break down that, they're kind of in a really big situation right now. Because they don't have the herbs, They don't have, a way to get herbs consistently anymore. They don't have a stock. And while they do manage to find some, they are still very worried about cats getting sick or injured. They also do not have a way to speak with StarClan, which, is even more pressing, especially if a new leader needs lives, and also just for the cats to just generally communicate with StarClan. Foreshadowing. Mothwing then sees and investigates the island, thinking it's a good place to potentially, serve as a camp or potentially a gathering place. But it's a little bit inaccessible to any cats but RiverClan, so it's kind of dismissed. Back with the patrol, the journey cats, they make their way around the lake, and Mistyfoot kind of acknowledges that the fact that these journey cats have a very unique bond and a very unique way of doing things that she doesn't really understand and can never understand. So she kind of begrudgingly kind of accepts that, they know what they're doing. I'm going to kind of follow their lead more or less, which, that's fair. Tawny Pelt also points at the fact that Brambleclaw and Squilf kind of have a relationship going on, which, like, okay. So then, after a little bit of journeying, WindClan is squared away. They find some suitable territory and potentially a suitable place for their camp. They also see a boat. It's not really relevant, but I think it's funny the cats know what a boat is. Anyway, so patrol moves on. Eventually, they fight some kitty pets, because why not? And they also stumble into a potential camp for ShadowClan, which is cool. And then eventually, they continue on, and then Squilf falls into a hole. Again. But luckily, the hole is ThunderClan's new camp. So that's exciting. So the patrol then continues on, Oh, and eventually they find a suitable place for WindClan. This place is perfect. It's almost as if it was tailor-made for the cat's needs. Anyway, they eventually make it out to the clans after a couple days of traveling, and Brambleclaw gives a speech to the clan saying they found suitable territory for everyone, and he's instilling optimism in everyone. The cats then all break off to the different groups to kind of discuss what they found. Hawkfrost then has a chat with Brambleclaw, and Squilf finds this conversation a cardinal sin. Here's the thing about this. Yes, Hawkfrost is clearly evil. He gives us evil vibes. But, specifically regarding the content of that discussion, there's nothing, sus there. There really isn't. But the fact that Squirrel Flight finds this, brief interaction, the most abhorrent thing in all of existence, is just really weird. I don't know. I'll get into it later, but this is sort of a problem with this book, in particular. So, yeah, it's just weird. Meanwhile, Leafpaw tries to speak with Squilf, who's kind of relaying information. The clans decide to use a clearing that they kind of settled in for the next gathering, and they kind of sleep for one last night before they head off in the morning to their new territories. Hawkfrost subtly, not really subtly, but kind of subtly, he challenges Mistyfoot's decision about where their camp should be, which is interesting. So, there is tension there. Yeah, he is clearly coded to be, this very ambitious, probably evil cat. But I don't know, there's definitely, it's weird. There's a conversation later where Leafpaw basically says that Hawkfrost hasn't technically done anything yet. So while he gives off evil vibes, he hasn't done anything yet. So, little leeway maybe? I don't know. We also get a very sad scene where all the kits of different clans have to say goodbye to each other. Because, they have to separate. Because, the clans are going to be, individualistic again. Which is a little sad, because it does bring up the point that, yes, the clans exist separately, but the Great Journey has kind of forged bonds and relationships that are going to be really hard to just kind of ignore. Which, I think it's very interesting. The book doesn't touch on this too much, but it touches on it enough where I'm yeah, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. I like what you did with that. So then, that night, Brambleclaw sleeps, and Barkface comes in and asks for Firestar. And Brambleclaw and then Firestar then speak to a dying Tallstar, who reminisces, who's very concerned for the future. And there's also a funny point that Tallstar thinks that Brambleclaw would make a very good deputy. That's a weird thing to say, but alright. Meanwhile, Brambleclaw kind of worries about repeating his father's mistakes. He's very ambitious, he wants to be deputy, but at the same time, he's concerned that him being deputy will just be him essentially being Tigerstar Jr., which, is a very valid concern. Obviously, he's not his father. He's never really shown inclinations up until now to, be his father, but it is still something that you should worry about, and would be concerned that people would perceive you for doing something for the wrong reasons. So I like that they brought that up. So then One Whisker comes in, and Tallstar declares that Mudclaw is no longer deputy, and now One Whisker is deputy. And that by default, when Tallstar dies, because he's dying, One Whisker will become leader. Interesting two things here. One, he says that ThunderClan and WindClan's future is in friendship, not hostility, which is the funniest thing ever considering what happens in the later books. That's really funny. But also, I get what Tallstar is doing. And I think, at least for this book, he makes the right decision. But as Brambleclaw kind of wrestles with out the rest of the book, he didn't do it in the right way. And if anything, most of the conflict in this book is caused by Tallstar's decision to do it in this manner. Which, that's, not great. Like, I feel this conversation would have gone better if he would have asked both Mudclaw and One Whisker to be present during this conversation. So, yeah, there's that. But you know what? Plot's got a plot, I guess. So anyway, Tallstar dies. He kicks the bucket. So then Barkface, who's the WindClan medicine cat, agrees that One Whisker is now technically the leader. He's on his side. Firestar then announces this to the clans to kind of like, not undermine authority or does not make people suspicious. Mudclaw shows up and he's honestly justifiably angry. Like, yeah, he would have been a terrible leader, probably. At least in the current situation. But at the same time, what happened was kind of dumb. And honestly just caused all the issues, as I said. But, yeah. Interesting thing is that Crowfeather backs One Whisker, as do many of WindClan. And, Mudclaw, begrudgingly stands down. He doesn't really want to fight because he probably thinks he's going to lose. But he refuses One Whisker's offer to become his deputy. So instead, One Whisker names Ashfoot. Ashfoot's not really been a character we've ever talked about, but she is Crowfeather's mother, which is interesting. This is never really brought up meaningfully in other books, but it's definitely something that, is interesting that they kind of made that connection. So then also there's this, unspoken concern about One Whisker being leader. Like, how is he going to get 9 lives? I mean, before, with the whole StarClan thing, which is it's kind of urgent, but now it's really urgent. Because as long as One Whisker does not have 9 lives, he's always going to be questioned, which is, concerning. Firestar also talks to Brambleclaw the fact that he can't name a deputy. Firestar refuses to name a deputy as long as he has hope that Graystripe is still alive. Which, on the one hand, props for Firestar to having absolute trust in the fact that Graystripe is alive. But on the other hand, it's kind of delusional. Listen, you can name a temporary deputy and just say that, until he comes back, you're deputy. And just, maybe make it a permanent deputy. But, I don't know, it's just kind of... I get where Firestar's coming from, but he's making the wrong decision. He just kind of is. Again, Brambleclaw, he really wants to be deputy, but, he's concerned about being like his father. But he also feels alone, because, his sister in a different clan. His situationship, relationship, whatever is going on with him and Squirrelflight, it's kind of in a weird position. Granted, it's not really fully his fault. He's definitely partially at fault, but it's kind of a mess. He just feels like he's completely and utterly alone. Which, there's that. So then Leaf Paw, meanwhile, is equally concerned about WindClan and their situation. Hawkfrost, also does some weird stuff, and the sisters don't trust him. Leafpaw points out that he hasn't done anything yet, as I said, and Squirrelflight says, give it time. On the one hand, yeah, but on the other hand, is she a hypocrite here? She never says that she judges him because of, who his parents are. But the reason he's giving off weird vibes, I don't know. It's weird. Because again, Squirrelflight, she's not wrong that, Hawkfrost is evil and gives off bad vibes. But at the same time, he hasn't done anything yet. And the fact that she's just really quick to judge without, even significant proof that he has done anything beyond just, be ambitious, is just, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Again, I get it, but it seems a little forced. Don't worry, you'll get a lot more forced later. But yeah, meanwhile, Leafpaw says goodbye to Mothwing, who's, helping out elders by giving them water. But the water that Mothwing was giving to elders was tainted by a dead rabbit. The reason she didn't see it is because the sun got in her eyes, which is fair. Leafpaw doesn't say anything, but is concerned for other elders. But then a little while later, the clans prepare to head out. And the Journey Cats, they meet properly for the last time. The clans are separating. They're going to their new territories. Things are going to go back to a relative, normal. So, there's that. Crowfeather laments that they aren't 6 of them, but Squirrelfly says they will always be 6, no matter what, which, it's a valid point. I really like that. The leaders then lay out some rough borders before the cats head out, although they did say they're kind of to be determined. They're going to experiment a bit and figure things out. And then Brambleclaw and Squilf then lead the way to the camp, and then they almost fall in again. So, that's fun. So some cats are kind of hesitant about their new home, which, that's valid. It's a new home, new place. Brambleclaw has a point earlier in the book. I didn't mention it because it wasn't really important, but he just wants, the new home to look like the old home, which, it's fair. If you're being upended from your entire life and forced to live somewhere else, you obviously want it to be similar, if not identical, to your old home. So the fact that it isn't is heartbreaking, but there's nothing you can do about it, but just try to not move on, but try to keep steadfast, I guess, is the way I want to put that. And then there's a point where Brambleclaw really wants to become deputy, which I'm damn, man, I get it. Deputyship is cool, but it's really heavy-handed, considering the way you've talked about it before. I don't know. It's interesting. Goldenflower, his mother, by the way, has a really cute scene where she comforts her son, which honestly I think is one of the few scenes where we have a scene where a parental figure comforts their child in a meaningful way. I don't know. It's out there, but I thought it was interesting to note. So then Leafpaw, because why not, she dreams about the new prophecy. And yes, that is how it's written in my notes, and no, I'm not going to change it. That's funny. We also find out that Mousefur is ill, having drunk some of the foul water. Leafpaw wants to help WindClan because they're more at risk. Their elders have been more weaker from the journey. ThunderClan then kind of starts to patrol and hunt and make a proper camp, settling in, figuring stuff out. The Meds cats, they go out and find herbs. Cinderpelt returns back to camp to kind of treat the cats, while Leafpaw goes to WindClan, who graciously accept her help because their elders are in fact sick. There's a slight border dispute because of there's a weird kind of spot between WindClan and ThunderClan territory, where there's a small kind of forested patch on WindClan's side, but the ThunderClan kind of think it's theirs. It's a little stupid, but yeah, there's that. Morning Flower, who's a kind of a major character in the first series as far as WindClan is concerned, she's very ill, but she is confronted as the chapter ends. 'Cause why not? So then back to Brambleclaw. He and some others patrol, they hunt, they explore. They almost get into a fight with ShadowClan over some territory, and Rowanclaw, who is Tawny Pelt's future mate, is a little bit racist Tawny Pelts, which is it's weird. It's weird. It's even weirder because the copy of the book I have is the reprint, which I know they haven't done that many changes to the books, but I know they've done a few changes in the reprint as far as what the text has done. So I feel it's a bit weird they didn't do it here. I don't know. It's weird. Firestar diffuses the situation because it's a border dispute, and then Brambleclaw is told to get moss. Brambleclaw is sad by this, and Squirrelflight tries to be friendly to him after the last conversation ended in her basically calling him stupid. He was half stupid, but not as stupid as you think he was. And he kind of ignores her, which is weak. That's just this is just, I'll talk about it later. But this is the start of an issue I have with how this book portrays relationship drama. I talk to people about this. This is just, it's the whole thing. Anyway, the person who confronted Leafpaw, surprise, surprise, I thought it was Mudclaw, but it's actually Crowfeather. He's really aggressive for some reason, but Whitetail, a WindClan cat who asked Leafpaw to come and help, calms, I say calm in quotation marks because he doesn't really, it's Crowfeather, that's not going to work, but he calms Crowfeather down. Leafpaw helps the 6 cats until Barkface returns. One Whisker thanks Leafpaw by giving up the forested WindClan territory. Mudclaw doesn't like this, which yeah, I mean, it's kind of a lot. Like, she saves some cats, and yeah, it's thanks, but like giving up the territory over a border dispute, that's not very it's not a great move, but it'll be solved later. So then Crowfeather, under orders, escorts Leafpaw home and reports to Firestar telling him about the new deal. Squirrelflight has no idea why Brambleclaw is indifferent to her, which, again, part of me is yeah, it's not, his reasons are weird, but at the same time, you kind of did the same exact thing. You were indifferent to him, and honestly very aggressively indifferent, and then you're surprised why he returns the favor, essentially? Why? Again, your reasons are, it's kind of valid, but the fact that you're shocked and acting like you aren't part of why what happened has happened is just an odd choice. Which Leafpaw kind of shares a similar sentiment, because she does not know how to deal with Squirrelflight's relationship drama, because as a medicine cat, she can't be in a relationship, at least with anyone but StarClan. So then, Brambleclaw then has a dream of the old territory, and then he meets Tiger Star and Hawkfrost in his dream. Which is weird, because Brambleclaw seems weirdly okay with this, specifically with his father. Because Brambleclaw's met his father. He knows the crime his father doth hath committed. And yet, he's just chill with it? That's very strange. Especially considering how the previous books have kind of portrayed his relationship with Tiger Star, where he's either very aggressively trying not to be his father and denying that he's his father, and then when he reunites with his father in his dream, which he's aware that this is probably his actual father, not just an apparition, he's like, hey, yeah, we chill. He's a little uneasy, but not as much as I think one reasonably would be. Hawkfrost, beyond the fact that he's evil, him being kind of chill with it, it makes sense because he never met Tiger Star, but Brambleclaw has, so it's a weird choice. But yeah, so then a little bit later, after a hunting patrol, Spiderpaw becomes Spiderleg, and his mentor, Mousefur, retires. Which, she's not that old, so it's a bit strange, but there's that. But here's the fun time. Gathering time. Yay! The first gathering of the Lake Territories. I have in my notes here, Squirrelflight is weirdly dismissive of Brambleclaw. And again, it's a lot. It's a lot. I'll talk about it in a sec, but this is it's so weird. It's so forced, their drama. Again, there are valid points, but we'll talk about it in a sec. So then, so on the way to the gathering, they meet the horse place cats. Smokey, Daisy, and Floss. Well, not Floss has kits. But it's interesting, a little foreshadowing for something that's going to happen in future books, which is a small, minute detail that'll have a bigger impact later on. I like that. It's a nice little touch. So things are very awkward at the gathering. Some cats are oh, we used to be friends, but now we're kind of enemies again. Because some cats are still trying to remember their friendships from the Great Journey. They remember their bonds. They're kind of friendships. They're cooperation. But now that they've kind of resettled, the division and kind of this animosity is reforming. But people are still how do we kind of deal with this? And that's a very valid point. It's not touched upon nearly as much as one would hope, but it's touched upon enough where you understand that, yeah, this is an interesting concept. And it's something that is understandable. And the later books do go into this a little bit, but I like that it's brought up here. So yeah. The gathering kind of... So then, Brambleclaw and Hawkfrost chat. They have a little chat about things. Hawkfrost is very open about his opinions with WindClan and RiverClan and other things. Brambleclaw, for his part, is a little more reserved about it. He isn't as open about it, which I think is it's interesting. Because he wants to have a relationship with his brother, but he still wants to kind of have a degree of separation between what he talks about and doesn't want to display clan secrets. But during their conversation, he and Squirrel had a little argument, like, he doesn't necessarily agree with Hawkfrost's choice of words, but he doesn't dismiss them. And to Squirrelflight, the fact that Brambleclaw doesn't agree with her and agrees with Hawkfrost, which, by the way, he doesn't really agree with him. He doesn't disagree with him, but I wouldn't say he agrees with him. But this interaction causes Squirrelflight to decide that her and Brambleclaw won't work out, because, as she says, Brambleclaw values Hawkfrost more than her. Like, what? What? Really? Really? So first off, he hasn't really supported him. Like, he hasn't disagreed with him, but he hasn't agreed with him. And yet, that's it. That's the only thing. Like, nothing really supports this sentiment beyond the fact that he wants to have a relationship with his brother. That's it. The only thing that she really vehemently disagrees with, that, like, you can say is a valid reason, not really a valid reason, but just a reason why she disagrees with them having a relationship, is the fact they have a relationship. Like, Brambleclaw, he wants to have a relationship with his brother. You know, he wants that kind of relationship, which, you know, in any other context would be fine. Even disregarding the fact that Hawkfrost is evil, wanting to have a relationship with your family and pursue that is something that someone should have the ability to. And while Brambleclaw is clearly, he's aware of Hawkfrost being sus, but he downplays it a bit. He doesn't deny it, but he downplays it. But just, like, at the same time, it's weird, because, like, what does that leave Tawny Pelt? Because Tawny Pelt is Brambleclaw's sister, and he has a relationship with her. And he wants to have a relationship with his sister. So why is it never brought up? It's weird. Like, this whole thing with Squirrelflight and Brambleclaw having this kind of relationship breakdown, it doesn't make any sense. You know, it just feels really forced and unnecessary, to the point where, like, it's just a soap opera. It's just a soap opera. It's just unnecessary soap opera drama for the sake of having unnecessary soap opera drama. So, like, again, what's the point beyond just, like, doing it for, like, plot's sake? I'll explain it a little bit more in a sec, because Leafpaw gives her point of view on this, which, it's a whole thing. Anyway, back to the plot. Cinderpelt, sees that Leafpaw thinks that Crowfeather is hot. Like, apparently, Leafpaw is very bad at keeping her facial expressions to herself. So then Leafpaw and, like, Squirrelflight have a conversation about the fact that Squilf has broken up with her. Not really broken up, the relationship was kind of all over the place. But, Leafpaw is even confused why what's happening has happened. Like, yeah, she's like, yeah, Hawkfrost is evil. But, like, what's going on? It's just so unnecessary and contrived. Like, honestly, what was the point? Anyway, to gathering stuff, the borders are set, you know, they're fixed. Firestar covertly gives One Star back the territory, that One Star, not really One Star, I say saying One Star, that One Whisker gave to him. You know, he bestows the territory back, saying that both cats need drinking water, so we'll give you the river, which is this covert way of turning him down. But then some foxes interrupt the gathering, but they are swiftly dealt with, causing people to kind of wonder, like, we need a safer place to gather. Which, you know, there's that. So the Meds then stay behind after the gathering to kind of discuss the state of things. You know, they need a way to speak with StarClan. They need a way to kind of speak with StarClan, to communicate with StarClan, and also to give One Whisker his 9 lives. But then Mothwing reveals to Leafpaw in private after their conversation that she's an atheist, that she does not believe in StarClan. She thinks it's just made up stories to keep the clans happy, which is interesting. This is a very interesting plot point, because yeah, we've had atheist cats before with Cloudtail. The difference being Cloudtail was a warrior. Mothwing is a medicine cat. Part of their whole deal is being the spiritual center of the clans. They communicate with the cats. So the fact that we have a medicine cat that is an atheist is fascinating and really interesting. And I think it's a very good concept that was introduced, especially this early on. Like, it's fascinating. And again, later books will kind of somewhat expand upon it, but even then, even in this first time where like we explicitly know, because it's been kind of hinted at in other books, but explicitly knowing where Mothwing stands in this book is a very interesting revelation. But yeah, there's that. So then, interestingly, Mothwing is also really cagey about the sign, the moth's wing, that led her becoming a medicine cat. Because, like, Leafpaw says, hey, what about that sign that made you a big medicine cat? And Mothwing's a little, like, concerned about it. We don't really know why yet, but, there's that. So then, the medicine cats are charged to kind of, like, find a sign, to figure out what's going on. Leafpaw searches for a sign, but doesn't find anything. She starts high, she searches low, but to little avail. Sorry. So one coming back from one of her journeys, she sees that Sorreltail and Brackenfur are clearly going to be a couple. Like, they're very much in love. But also, a new and proper medicine cat den has been discovered. It's a little cave. There are, like, cracks to serve your herbs in. There's a little pool of water for cats to drink. It's pretty much perfect, which is awesome. So that night, while sleeping in the new medicine cat den, Leafpaw has a dream. She walks around and she meets with Crowfeather in his dream and consoles him about Feathertail. She then finally meets Spotleaf again, re-establishing a connection with StarClan. She's given a sign to kind of follow the river, and then she wakes up. So then she goes to the river with Sorreltail, who tags along for reasons, and they kind of follow the river up to its source, which is the moonpool. Not only does Leafpaw name it, but it also means that now they have a way to communicate with StarClan. And finally, after all this time, the cats have confirmation that this is the place they are supposed to be. Which is awesome. So then, a little while later, the next day, Brambleclaw hunts with patrol. They find the abandoned two-leg nest, which is interesting. And they report it to Firestar. Brambleclaw thinks Squirrelflight doesn't trust him because of his father, which, that's complicated. Because while Squirrelflight attests in an earlier chapter that Brambleclaw and Hawkfrost's relationship has nothing to do with them being related to Tigerstar, like she says, blood has nothing to do with it. Which, I don't know if I fully believe her, but okay. Okay, sure, why not? So then, word is sent to the other clans about the moonpool. Cinderpelt goes to ShadowClan and RiverClan to tell them about this, so they can meet for the half moon. A little while later, Leafpaw goes to WindClan and she tells them. WindClan is very ecstatic by this, Barkface in particular. One Whisker is a little concerned, but we don't really know why, but he wants to, wait a little bit. So then Leafpaw speaks to Crowfeather really briefly and gives him a message from Feathertail, who Feathertail basically tells him to kind of not move on, but to not just, solely be focused on her and her death, which Crowfeather kind of interprets badly. There's that. But then, that night, at the half moon, the meds go to the moonpool. Leafpaw gets another disturbing dream about the prophecy, and afterwards, Cinderpelt gives Leafpaw her full medicine cat name, Leafpool, after the moonpool which Leafpool had discovered. And I just gotta say, Leafpool, very good name. Excellent choice. So then a little while later, Brambleclaw leads the patrol and they run into Mistyfoot, who says, hey, this book's rather boring so far, let's cause some plot. Basically, she needs to speak with Firestar. So Mistyfoot has found evidence that Mudclaw and Hawkfrost have been meeting in secret. Ooh. Hawkfrost is currently leading a patrol that hasn't come back yet, specifically comprised of cats who most were opposed to Mistyfoot coming back, according to her, and reassuming her position as deputy. So Mistyfoot believes Hawkfrost intends to attack WindClan and support Mudclaw in like a takeover. Firestar is a little skeptical, but he agrees to investigate because the timing is a little suspicious. Because now that the moonpool has been discovered, One Whisker has the ability to get 9 lives. And, if Mudclaw was going to usurp power, he'd have to do it now. And so, as the cats kind of prepare to leave, go on a little patrol to investigate, Leafpool, who is a little suspicious of the whole thing, she tells Firestar and the clan of the prophecy, the blood prophecy. The patrol is a little concerned, so they hurry to WindClan camp with haste. And before, they kind of don't think anything's happening, like things are quiet, a little suspicious, but nothing too crazy. So as they're about to leave, they see a patrol attack the camp, and a fight ensues. ThunderClan, RiverClan, WindClan, even some ShadowClan cats for some reason. They all are fighting in this WindClan camp. It's an even match. Mudclaw's side seemed to get the upper hand for a while, but then ultimately the fight turns around, and Brambleclaw briefly fights Hawkfrost, who flees with Mudclaw away from the camp. Crowfeather chases some ShadowClan cats towards the ThunderClan camp, whilst Brambleclaw chases the other traitors. This is also significant because this is the first and true battle of the Lake Territories, which is, it's not great, but it had to happen sooner or later. Meanwhile, back at ThunderClan camp, Leafpool waits atop the cliff that kind of surrounds the camp. She's keeping guard, in case any cats come there. Not that it's a weird thought, but not unreasonable. So, the ShadowClan cats who fled the WindClan camp, they come bursting through the underbrush, and they run into Leafpool. However, they can't stop, and they ultimately run off the cliff and fall to their deaths. They knock Leafpool off the cliff, and she hangs on to the edge, and Crowfeather, who comes in, is really freaked out. He kind of has this, PTSD moment where, he's like, I couldn't save Feathertail. What do I do? And Leafpool ultimately snaps him out of it and says, hey, save me, please. I just because you couldn't save Feathertail doesn't mean you can't save me. And then Crowfeather does. And then Crowfeather has this really panicked moment, because he's like, I saved you. I did what I couldn't do with Feathertail. But, I can't love 2 cats. So Crowfeather admits that he also has feelings for Leafpool. So he's has kind of panicky moment. But that'll be resolved in the next book. Yay! So then, Brambleclaw pursues the traitors, Mudclaw and Hawkfrost. He then fights Mudclaw a bit, but before he is, injured, Hawkfrost saves him. Hawkfrost then alleges that Mudclaw persuaded him to join his cause. But Mudclaw retorts that Hawkfrost wanted to be deputy, specifically Mudclaw's deputy, and approached him initially about his plan to take over WindClan and then later RiverClan. Hawkfrost kind of refutes this, but Mudclaw then escapes before things kind of can escalate, only to be struck by lightning. Not really. He's not really struck by lightning. Lightning strikes a tree that falls on Mudclaw that also creates a bridge between the mainland and the island. Because, that's convenient. Yay. So basically, a place for the gathering has been established. Which is, that's cool. We also find out that One Whisker's leadership is safe. One Whisker forgives Hawkfrost. Things are kind of settled. But Squirrelflight, who thinks that that Hawkfrost was telling the truth, or Mudclaw was telling the truth about Hawkfrost did, thinks the thing between her and Brambleclaw is just irreconcilable. It cannot be repaired. And listen, Brambleclaw is stupid for just blindly believing his brother, but at the same time, what? Mudclaw is dead. It's kind of hard to figure out who's right and who's wrong. I don't know. Again, he's stupid, but he's not nearly as stupid as Squirrelflight seems to think that he is. But, yeah, that's the, end of Starlight. It was a time and a half. This book's a lot, man. It's so much. So, here's the thing. What the fuck was this book? Like, genuinely. What happened? The first book, the first half, was pretty good. You know, exploring the territories, you know, all the details about exploring new land, reestablishing normalcy, you know, all that stuff. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. It proposed a lot of interesting questions, like how do you explore new territory? How do you kind of fix a camp, make it more like a home? You know, how do you hunt? How do you kind of like keep things civil and like with new territory and borders and stuff like that? How do you find a new place to communicate with StarClan? All of that is interesting. And like these interesting questions about like, you know, how an atheist medicine cat, you know, all that is fascinating, cool. But then you have the characters who are just the most baffling things I've ever read. Like Leafpool, she's fine. She doesn't do that much, but she does do enough to be like, just okay. Like her finding the moonpool, that's pretty cool. I like that. And her also getting the prophecy is interesting. Interesting stuff. But that's kind of it. You know, they kind of tease a lot of her relationship trauma that like, it's like a prelude of what's to come. At least in this book, it's like, you wonder, where's it going to go? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? We don't know yet. That's for later books to decide. But overall, she is fine. Nothing mind-blowing. But it does enough to justify why she's the point of view character in this book. But then you have Brambleclaw. He's all over the place. And it feels like, depending on the chapter, he's contradicting himself. Like, you know, he wants to be deputy, but he doesn't want to be too ambitious. But he wants to be ambitious. And then also, his, like, interactions with Squirrelflight are just all over the place. Like, again, part of me is like, I get why she's mad at you, but at the same time, part of her is being unreasonable. And I just feel like that all of this drama between her, Brambleclaw and Squirrelflight is so contrived and unnecessary. And just, it's just drama for the sake of having drama. And all of this would honestly just be resolved if they had one proper conversation. But this book just refuses to have that conversation. And apparently, maybe that applies to all the Warrior Cats, but here it feels the most egregious, at least initially. So, I don't know. But, this book it's a lot. Starlight's a lot. There's a lot of good stuff, a lot of weird stuff, a lot of just insane stuff. But it's not boring. It ain't boring, not by a long shot. It was actually very entertaining and kind of like a so bad it's good kind of way. Not even like a so bad it's good, ironically. Just like, it's not as boring as other books, but certainly isn't good. So I don't know how I would like rank it or whatever. I don't know, that's very difficult. It's just, it's confusing. It's very confusing. But, yeah. That's Starlight. The start of a new era with Warrior Cats, with us being at the Lake Territory. You know, new stories, new prophecies, new characters, insane drama that doesn't make any sense, except to the authors, who I don't even know what makes sense to them, considering that's not really addressed ever again. But, yeah. So what did you all think? Do you like this book? Do you not like this book? Did you think it was just incomprehensible at times? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a nice rest of your day.